Hello and good evening. Hopefully, you can hear me. If you cannot hear me, let me know. I'm excited, you guys. I haven't gone live because I did the whole lives in June, so I didn't go live in July. So I'm excited to get the lives back started. Hey, Rochelle from Ohio and Seamless Med Spa ATL is here. You were one of the first people to sign on, so very, very good. Hi, Cornflakes. All right, I have everybody logging in. Hey, how are you doing? Thank you guys. Um, I really want to just answer any questions that you may have because right now I feel like, not much has changed in the housing market. My recommendation was kind of, for the most part, don't rush, but buy when you're ready. There's really not a rush to buy. Interest rates are going to remain at this level for a while. When inflation goes down, interest rates will go down. And, as far as affordability, that's the biggest thing right now. Can you afford at the higher price and can you afford it at the higher payment? So while you guys are logging in, let me know where you guys are coming in from. I'm going to go over a few things for fall. Like as we get into the fall market, I know in a lot of areas school is starting. And so a lot of people get out of the market when school starts. So it's going to be, a change in the market a little bit come September, October, and then November, December, we get into the holidays. And a lot of people don't want to sell their home during the holidays. So that resale inventory goes back down. New construction may still be up, but a lot of people don't even want to buy a home during the holidays. They'll take a break November, December, and then they'll restart in January. So that fall/winter market is an opportunity sometimes to get a deal if you're still in the market during that time because you have less competition with other people. So let's go over some points and then I will take your questions. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat. I'm going to try to take them in order. We're here till 7 o'clock. I do have all of my lives saved under the live tab. So when you come to my channel, it'll have all the lives saved. Some of the lives are just ask me anything. That's what tonight is. Some of them are themed, so you can check those out. But all of my lives are saved. So definitely do that. All right, so I'm going to go over just a couple of things and then I'll go with the questions. And it's really ask me anything. So if you're in a transaction right now and you want some help with it, you are in the market, you need some help with it, you're not even pre-approved yet and you want help with it. So I'm really opening it to any kind of real estate questions that you may have. So we know inventory is tight on the resale market. We know why, because a lot of people on the resale side don't want to sell their homes because they have those low interest rates, those 2%, those 3%. So either they bought during the pandemic, 2000, 2001, 2002, they bought during that time, or during that time they refinanced to a lower mortgage rate. So either one. So a lot of them are saying, okay, I'm going to sell my house and be paying more for another house that may not be even as big because home prices have gone down, gone up so much. A lot of people in surveys said they couldn't afford to buy their home, what their home is worth right now. They couldn't afford to even buy it right now. So a lot of people are staying put where they are. That's why inventory is low. Buyers are flocking to new construction. I went to a new construction townhome community in my area over the weekend. It was packed. People were coming in. My client bought in that subdivision in 2020. They sold it in 2022, right at 2022. They made about $70,000 selling it, a year and a half or so later. But now they're selling, his model was 280, say, in 2020. When he sold it, we sold it for 350, and now they are 400,000. And now, mind you, I told him just rent it out, don't sell it. But he was trying to put the money into another house. But so they've gone up in the price from 2020 to 2023. They are offering a 3%. 3% credit. So 3% credit to closing costs. Use it how you want. Most people are using it to buy down their rate to make it more affordable. And that's why new construction is so attractive right now, because they are promotionally saying, hey, We're going to give you money to buy down your rate. We're going to give you money to cover your closing costs. At a closing today, they closed at 5.5% because the builder was offering to buy down that rate. So another thing, median list price, they're up 3% from last year. And when I'm talking about nationally. So some places might be down a little bit, but there were never like, double digit price drops in any, most areas. Affordability, we know it's less affordable, high prices, high interest rates. It's very difficult for first time home buyers, which is primarily who I focus on. Fannie Mae expects prices to fall 1.2%. That's not a lot, you guys. So it's not like if I was waiting to buy because home prices were going down, 1% wouldn't make me wait. And then experts predict that there might be lower prices, but when they say lower prices, they're really saying like, a small amount, and higher borrowing rates, or they're going to stay where they are. Right now, they're in like the high sevens. It might go down to the high sixes, or down to the high sixes, mid. Like they've been fluctuating back and forth depending on what the Federal Reserve will do. And then 2024, expect a lot of the same, unless the Federal Reserve kind of pauses, and they pause without signaling that they'll raise it again. Because a lot of times in their meetings and that sort of thing, they will pause. They pause the month prior. They pause on hiking interest rates, but they signaled that they may have to raise again. So when July, they raise the interest rate again. So you just want to make sure that you're paying attention. As inflation goes down, interest rates will go down. That doesn't mean home prices will go down, though. So when interest rates go down, more people get back in the market, supply and demand, prices will either stay where they are or go up when interest rates go down. All right, so I'm really excited. That's all I wanted to kind of go over as we approach the fall market. What's going to give you the most opportunity in the fall winter market is less competition, because again, a lot of people are buying because they want their kids to be settled. A lot of people, want to buy a house over the summer, the spring, and then a lot of people get out of the market fall and spring, and it'll pick back up again come the new year, because a lot of people have a goal of, starting the new year with the house. So let's go into your questions. Go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm going to answer as many as possible as I go through them. And if you're catching the replay, I usually have all the questions timestamped, so you can go to specific questions as you want to go. So Cornflakes, hey, how you doing? Shan, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Do you save your lives? Yes, under the live tab. So let's do that. Let's see. Shan has her first question. It says, I'm 28 and my lease ends in September. My boyfriend and I are trying to buy a place, but everything is so expensive here up north. We're ready, but should we wait until next year? I don't know. So I kind of went over that. I don't think it's going to be that much more difficult for you next in 2024 than it is right now. It's probably going to be pretty similar. The only thing, if interest rates do go down a little bit, then you're going to have more competition. You're going to have more competition in the spring. So I really advise for you and your boyfriend, set your budget. Once you set your budget, make sure you're really, really reasonable with that budget and what can you afford. This is not the time, in my opinion, to go ahead and push a budget with everything going on in the economy. So you want to make sure you're keeping your budget. You want to make sure that you're not depending on a refinance, because a lot of people will tell you, hey, you'll just refinance, buy now and refinance in a year, 2 years. That's not guaranteed. There's a lot of things that come up with refinances. I have a video all about, when it makes sense for you to refinance. So make sure you understand that, because even say 3 years from now, rates are in the fives and you are at a 6.5, it's still going to have to make sense. There are going to be costs to that refinance. It's going to take a few years before you break even typically. So you just want to think those things through before you go ahead and buy. Always think about relocating. All of you, that's what everybody is doing, right? For the most part. I live in the South, and I think Texas has complained about it, Arizona, North Carolina, South Carolina. People are relocating from very expensive states and coming to southern states that are more affordable. So you may want to look into that unless you're really, really attached to living up north. All right. Hey, Derek from Tampa. And then you guys in Florida and California, your insurance rates are going through the roof in a lot of places. because a lot of insurers are leaving those places, be it wildfires, hurricane risk, flooding risk, all of that. So the cost of home ownership in those states, it was already expensive. It's even more expensive, especially California. But Florida was reasonably priced in some areas. Now they're even more expensive because of those insurance. So if you are thinking about buying in Florida, you need to make sure you understand how much that insurance is going to be in that state before you make that commitment. All right, especially if you're really close to water. But I think a lot of, Florida, depending on where you are, you're going to be around water or, pretty close to water. So you want to just make sure you're doing that research about Florida ahead of time. Hey, Ronald from North Carolina. From South Carolina, BM. I just got my first pre-approval ever. Congratulations. And if you guys watched my videos in the past, I'm a big proponent. Even before you're ready, go ahead and get a pre-approval, see where you stand, and make a plan for home ownership. Even if it's like 2 years away or 1 year away, at least you know where you stand and you can kind of build from that initial plan. All right. With the interest rates and inflation costs, is NACA still a good avenue? NACA is always going to be a good avenue for the most part because they're one of the best mortgages that is very hard to compete with a NACA mortgage. It's no down payment. It's no closing costs. There's no mortgage insurance. And then if you do have money, or if the seller contributes, right, to your, if the seller contributes to your closing costs, or if you have your own money, since you don't have to apply it to your down payment, you don't have to pay it down, apply it to your closing costs. A lot of people use their extra money to buy down that NACA rate, because at the height of, when interest rates were say 4% or 5%, people were saying, oh, my NACA mortgage is 1.5, my NACA mortgage was 2%. So people that were getting NACA were getting 2% and 1% mortgage rates a while ago, before the pandemic. So they are still a good opportunity. I'm hearing from a lot of people, they're still kind of cumbersome. You have to go through counseling and that sort of thing. On the fastest I've ever heard somebody come through NACA was like 2 months. The longest, probably like a year or so. A lot of people drop out in between. So I still think that NACA is a good deal. If you're buying a house and you qualify for NACA, and it's a good time to try it out, because it's a good mortgage overall, especially like what they're giving you. So I would recommend that you do it. It's less competitive. Like sellers are not getting 10 offers in a lot of areas. During the pandemic, they were getting 10, 20 offers, so they didn't want to even deal with NACA. Right. But now sellers are not getting as many offers, so they're considering accepting an offer that includes NACA. And then you can use NACA with new construction, because you are not using their preferred lender. You may not be able to get the incentives. You need to ask, because a lot of incentives go with you using the preferred lender. But if you are using NACA, there's no down payment, there's no closing costs. So you can still come in and use NACA in a new construction subdivision, and that may work for you as well. But try to get both if you can. All right, so hey, Cornflake, question: do all realtors use the credit expert? What of simulator? Okay, so I think you're asking, in one of my videos, I talked about most lenders, not realtors, most lenders have credit simulators that they use. So say they have somebody that they need to have a 620 credit score, but when they do their application, they have a they have a 598, and they need them to come up, 22 points or so. They can tell them, they'll run their credit in the simulator, and they'll tell them, hey, if you do this, they'll look at their whole credit. If you do this, this, and this, you'll get a 620 within 2 months. So it's very specific direction that they can give you to say, if you do this, this is the most likely outcome, and this is how long it would likely take you. So that's how, getting a pre-approval ahead of time can help you really focus on what's most important to fix or do on your credit. They may tell you to pay a credit card down to a certain level. They may tell you to pay something off. They may tell you to dispute something. But they'll give you like a little printout telling you exactly what to do. I'm not a big proponent about paying for credit repair. So to me, that's kind of like a little hack that you can use to get, some suggestions on how you can get your credit up the fastest. I think that's what you're talking about. Okay, what are good months? Ronald said, what are good months to sell your home in 2024? Definitely the spring. So if you were trying to get like the optimal, you're looking at March, April, May, and June are typically, July is kind of the beginning. It depends on where you are. If you're in the South, then you want to have it sold by July, of course, because school starts. Some schools start at the end of July. Some schools start August 1st, 2nd, like very beginning of August. So you want to be in the market when a lot of families typically are in the market, when people like to move. A lot of people retire, if they're moving to a house and, they're leaving one place and going to another place, they may retire before the summer so they can start their vacations and that sort of thing. So you definitely you're going to have the most eyes on your property in the spring, early summer months. So that's ideally when you want to list it. You'll have the less eyes on your property November, I would say Halloween through New Year's. That's when you don't want to list it, because you're going to have a lot of people that are not looking at during that time because it's during the holidays. I call that my desperate sellers months, because you can find a deal, because if they have their house on the market during the holidays, they really need to sell their house typically, because most people don't. They'll say, oh, I'll just list it in the new year. A lot of people, if they're getting divorced, they'll be like, okay, let's get through the holidays and we'll sell the house in the new year, that sort of thing. So a lot of people don't want to do it during that time, but those are the best times: spring, early summer. Tara, thank you guys for all these questions. Tara says, can a buyer switch lenders before closing? Yes. Okay. But there's a little word of caution for switching lenders. Okay. So there's no rule that you have to, just because you did a pre-approval with someone, that you have to use them to close on your house. Okay. But when you decide to use a lender, so say that I'm going to do a resale. So when you put in your offer, you send your offer in and you showed, your pre-approval to that seller saying that you were going to use this lender. And you gave that lender your contract. That's typically what starts the whole process, going through underwriting. You give that lender the contract for that house, and they'll begin with that. All right. So sometimes they'll make you pay for the appraisal, depending on how far you're getting along in that process. Say you're 10 days before closing, and then you figure out, I don't want to use this person, I want to use that person. But your closing is in 10 days. There's no penalty for telling lender A, I no longer want to use you, I'm using this person. The only penalty may be that you may not be able to get your appraisal fee back because you already paid for it. Unless you're doing FHA appraisals stay with the house. So your new lender can usually pull up that FHA appraisal that's already been done. Okay, so that's one thing. But can lender B close you in time that it won't have an issue with the seller? So if you are deciding to change lenders after you're already under contract, you need to make sure that the next lender, whoever you're trying to switch to, can close you on time. If they cannot, you need to go back to the seller, you work with your agent and try to get an amendment to delay the closing, to move the closing date further, giving lender B more time to get your loan closed. Because if, say, for example, it's going to take them 3 weeks to get your loan closed, and that's 21 days, you close in 10 days, they need extra time. And if you have agreed with that seller that you're going to buy their house on a specific date, you may be in default of that contract, and they could potentially terminate on you because you didn't close on time. So you want to make sure when you're changing things, there's a reason for you changing it, and it makes sense for you to change it. Sometimes you can, if it's a rate thing or some kind of promotion, go back to lender A and say, hey, lender B is offering me this, can you match it? A lot of times they can match that other lender's rate because they don't want to lose you. They've done all this work, they have you through underwriting, they may be able to match whatever you're being offered on the other side, instead of just losing you. So just have that conversation with their first lender before you just decide to switch. All right, good question, Tara. All right. And make sure you have a question mark by your questions, because sometimes you guys are, which is good, communicating with each other, and I want to make sure I'm getting any other questions. So BM says, if I find a house I like slightly, over my pre-approval. Could I submit it as a backup offer if they don't get buyers at that price, or is that a no? The answer is yes, you definitely can, but let's give an example. So say there's a house for sale for $200,000 and you are approved for $190. Just offer them the $190. Or, well, number one, you should only be offering when you work with your agent, a reasonable offer for that house. Maybe the house is not worth $200,000. So anytime, there's a list price, that's what the seller desires to get. That doesn't mean that's what their house is worth. And make sure you're keeping that in mind. So when I'm working with a buyer and they want a house, and the house is $200,000, I'm going to do my due diligence on my side, pull my comps to tell my client, is it worth $200,000? Is that a reasonable list price, or is it overpriced? Is it underpriced? So you need to have that conversation with your agent before you put in any offer, right? So you want to have that conversation first. It could be your agent could say, hey, you guys, their price at market price, $200,000 is a good rate. Or they could say, hey, the last homes that sold in this neighborhood, the most it sold for is $185. I think they're overpriced. Let's come in at $185. So you want to make sure when you're making offers, you're making an offer, not a knowledgeable offer, not just offering what they're asking. Because a lot of sellers are overpriced sometimes, right? So you want to make sure that you have done your math on your side. Because don't assume that all sellers just, this is market price, they're selling their house. A lot of sellers are like, I want, $600,000, and their house is worth $500,000, So, but the agent will still list it because they want that business, and they'll assume that they'll reduce the price later. So I'll give you an example. I had a ranch home. The house had been on the market for a while. I think it was, don't quote me on this, say it was $260. I did the math. I saw how long they were on the market. I told my client, let's come in at $240. And they took it, and it appraised for like $270 something. But at that time, I was like, hey, they've been on the market for a long time. They sound pretty desperate based on the description. Let's just come in at this price, get it closed. So your agent should never just be, let's offer, you want to offer $200,000? There should be like a meeting that you guys are having and putting in that best offer. So the answer to your question is yes, you can offer less, but I want you to offer what would be reasonable for that market. And if, say, they are priced correctly and you want to come in lower, just come in lower. The least they can say is no, and that's the most you can do, right? When I have a video about the least expensive home I've ever sold, and it was $97,000, and it was listed for $97,000. My client was approved for $95,000. This was 2019, but it was move-in ready, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Like, we had to get it, right? And so and I knew that was a good price. So I wasn't trying to get them to get $95,000. I went back to the lender and I showed them the house. I was like, okay, you got to come up $2,000 for this lady. This is the only house that I found that's move-in ready. So the lender was able to come up, but I knew that it was worth 97, if not more than that 97,000. All right, good question. All right, doll. Let's see. Is it better to get a mortgage for an investment property or a primary residence? I live in New Jersey with a DTI of 37%, 690 credit score. I've been living in my apartment for 11 years. I'm trying to make sure I understand your question. So let me answer how I think you're trying to ask me. It is better when you're buying a property for the first time, typically, to buy it as your primary residence, where you're going to live. The interest rate will be lower, and the interest rate is going to be lower. The down payment is going to be lower because lenders find you less risky because you're going to live there than trying to do it as an investment. Now, if you're buying it and you're not going to live there, let's say the difference, FHA owner-occupied mortgage only requires 3.5% down. If you are going to do an investment property, minimum probably 15%, usually it's about 20% that you're going to put down. So it's drastically different. Now, if your goal, your long range goal is to change that property into an investment property, then you buy it as your primary residence. The only thing that you you are agreeing to do to that house is live in it for 1 year, to own or occupy it for at least 1 year. And then you can do whatever you want to with it. You could rent it out, you could change it to an investment property. But initially, if you tell them that you're going to own or occupy a house, then it's mortgage fraud to just go ahead and rent it out and never move in it and have no intention of moving in it. But as far as pricing, down payment, and interest rate, is going to be financially better for you to buy a house as your primary residence. All right, if you didn't mean that, just ask me a question toward the bottom, okay? All right, if you guys are just joining me, if you're catching the replay, I want you to please like and subscribe if you haven't already. This is a Ask Me Anything live, so I'm trying to answer as many questions, primarily for first-time home buyers, whether you're in a transaction right now, if you are thinking about buying in the future. I'm opening this live to anything, so get your questions in. But take a moment. We have about 195 people on right now. Go ahead and please hit the like button if you don't mind. Thank you so much. All right, let's get back into the questions. All right, Miss Smile, what should your credit score, debt to income ratio try to be to get a better interest rate? What is the lowest you can pay down your interest? All right, so I would say above a 760, and this could vary for a lot of people. Watch my video with Kevin that I did about pre-approvals under live. I did an interview with him for home ownership month, I believe. And he said specifically what the interest rate was, but I think it's about 760. Anything above that, you're getting the same scores. You're getting the same rates quoted to you, even if somebody has like an 820, 840, you're gonna get the same rate. So anything above a 760, you're getting the best rate available. And then debt to income ratio, you just want it to be as low as possible. I'm not sure exactly what that needs to be, but you want it to be, again, as low as possible. You are going to have this back end and front end ratios, but when you purchase your home, you're going to have a debt to income ratio. So ideally you want 0 when you're coming in, you have no debt, but you just want that to be as low as possible. 42% is usually the max. On the max side, some lenders will allow you to get closer to 50% debt to income ratio. The higher your credit score, the higher they allow your debt to income ratio to be. But 42% is kind of that sweet spot where a lot of lenders don't want to see you go more than 42%. So you want to, between 0 and like 40%, lower the better for debt to income ratio. But watch that video with me and Kevin. He says the exact credit score. You asked me something else. What is the lowest you can pay down on your interest? I'm not sure, but you can pay it down significantly. But when you're thinking about, what she's talking about is buying points, right? So you can pay your lender interest up front to give you a lower interest rate. So basically, I'll pay you interest now. So over the life of the loan, my interest will be less, okay? When you're doing that, you have to figure out, okay, at what point am I going to break even? So say interest rates are at 7% and you want a 4%, and they're like, oh, that's going to be $25,000. And at what point do you make back up that $25,000? Is it year 7, year 8? That's why it sometimes doesn't make sense to pay so much up front, because what if you sell that house, right? Say you sell that house in 3 years, you're not going to make that $25,000 back. They already got their money because you wanted that lower rate. So sometimes it doesn't make sense. I don't like you using your own money to buy down your rate. If it's the seller's money, it might be a little bit different. So, and sometimes you may want to use, the seller can't give you money for your down payment, only your closing costs. So, that's the buying down of your rate, any more of your fees, that sort of thing. So just think about that first. I'm sure it has to be some amount. They're not going to do it 0 interest necessarily, but it's going to probably vary with lender how much you can buy it down. But a lot of times it doesn't make sense to buy it down so significantly. Okay, so just make sure you're doing that math. I have a video about points and that sort of thing you could look at. All right, let me try to hide this. But like and subscribe. I'm going to ask y'all again, probably at about, it's about 6:30 now. All right, so let's go. Let me see. What about manufactured homes? I'm not sure what your question is about manufactured homes, but in general, and I'm saying in general, one of the big advantages of manufactured or mobile homes, that's what they used to be called, was that they're much more affordable. Now, if your biggest thing is affordability, they could be an option for you. If your biggest thing is to, like, make sure that this property is worth more in the future, a lot of times, depending on where it is, it probably is not going to hold its value. A lot of companies don't mortgage manufactured homes unless it's on a permanent foundation. So you need to be very mindful of that. Otherwise, they treat it like a vehicle because it can be moved from one place to the next. So when you're buying a manufactured home, depending on where you're putting it on your land, you may have to fix it to that property in order to get a mortgage for that property. So you need to make sure you understand that. Are you going to buy that land, buy the land first, then put the mobile home on the land, that sort of thing. So you want to think about that ahead of time, but they are more affordable. I think that's the biggest thing, is the affordability of them. But you typically can't do a mortgage on a mobile home unless it's affixed to the property already. So just be mindful of that. Okay, let's see. Thank you. No more victims for that question. All right, Trisha, I inherited a house. Everything is done with probate. Yay. My question is it better to rent or sell the house in order to purchase a bigger home? I'm already pre-approved for $200,000. This is a maybe question to me. Okay. And I say the reason why I'm saying this is a maybe question either way is, what is your goal? I'm seeing that you're not wanting to move into this house. How far is this house from where you are? So is the house in a different state than you? Is it some, I don't know where it is. I would think that it may be better. And I'm sorry for your loss. I'm assuming, somebody passed away and left you this house. It depends on what you want to do. I think if it was me, I would probably hold on to the house, rent it out, because I'm looking that it's probably paid for. I'm trying to see, okay, you don't owe anything left on it, I'm assuming. So you could, have no mortgage, rent it out at market rate, and that becomes your income, right? And so when it's time, if you're pre-approved now for $200,000, probably with that rental income, you may be approved for more. That's one option. Or you could sell the house. I just like the fact that, like, if you could invest in a house, would you buy a house for investment purposes? If you would, then that might be a good idea. If you have no desire to be a landlord, you have no desire to, deal with, renting it out or finding a management company to do those types of things, then you may. I just feel like you could do both almost, but you have to see what you want to do. But as far as wealth building, I probably would keep it because I think long term. But again, it matters where the house is, what condition it's in, all of that. You might have to put more money into it. How much is the house worth? So I would get with the agent wherever that house is, figure out what that house is worth, how much could it potentially rent out for, deal with a lender to say, okay, if I have this house and I rent it, what do I qualify for? If I just sell the house, what is it worth? What would I put on to the new house? So either way, it's a blessing that you'll be able to do multiple things. But if it was me, I would probably try to figure out how I'm going to keep the house and still buy something affordable, because it might be long-term more beneficial to me. But if you feel like maybe it's not in a good neighborhood, it's not going to stay with its value, then that might be something different. All right. Thank you, Trisha. Okay, let's see. Two Sisters Adventures. Is it advisable to wait until my fourth grader graduates from elementary school before looking to buy a home? I am just confused. Currently in an apartment. The house that I live in now, I moved to, my husband and I moved into it when my oldest was starting kindergarten, because we're like, okay, we're going to keep them here. We want to keep them stable, that sort of thing. So, and we'll probably just stay here till they get out of high school. They have friends, they're stable, they're all that. So that was the plan. That was the goal. So a lot of times when you have children, you want to take them out. I mean, they will adapt even if you take them out in the middle of school. But a lot of people say, oh, I'll get you through elementary school, and then, middle school, you're starting new anyway, start then again, or high school, that sort of thing. So I don't know. When I say advisable, you really need to go on your budget and what you can afford and what's going to change between now and then. So I think your child, if you want them to finish, I don't know, some elementary schools stop at fourth grade. Some of them stop at fifth grade. If you feel it'll be a better transition for your child, just for you to buy after they graduate from elementary school and then say, hey, I want to be in this school system after, because it might, make a difference as to what school system you're in. It might be an easier transition for you. But if you feel like, you find a good deal and you want to move now, then you may have to move now. So just be open to it. Go ahead and get your pre-approval, be open to it. Maybe take this year to really research your next step and where you want to be. So then you're going to be there from, her fourth grade or middle school or junior high school to high school. Thank you. Okay, I'm in Arizona, but considering moving because of the housing costs here. Any states that's cheaper for buying a home? I mean, a lot. You can move probably to Oklahoma, Ohio is cheaper. Parts of Georgia are going to be cheaper. Alabama is cheaper. Mississippi is cheaper. It's really going to be depending on where you want to live and how that lifestyle is going to be, and probably employment opportunities. So there are going to be a lot of states that are less expensive than Arizona. However, you want to start doing that research to say, okay, not just what's cheaper, but where am I going to be able to live comfortably, work, all of those things. So start doing your research. They're probably going to be in the southern states and some of the Midwest states. If you're just open to anywhere, you can go, like Zillow is nationwide. So you can kind of go in those different places, look at the different cities and see what is most attractive to you. But there are going to be a lot of states that are less expensive than Arizona, especially depending on where you're coming from in Arizona. That might be a lot less expensive. All right. Thank you. I don't know, girly. All right. So it's about 6:38. Keep these questions going. Okay. I think I answered some of these questions. Curtis, remember we having a party when Curtis buys a house, y'all. I am at my house. Should I pay points to lower the interest rate? Only if you are going to stay there long enough for you to break even and make money, right? Because if you pay points, you are not. Watch my video on points and then watch my video on, I don't have video, should I pay points? I might do a video, should I pay points? But in my points video, I do explain it. When you pay points to lower your interest rate, you're going to save. So say you're saving, you pay these points, say $5,000, and you're going to save every month $50 on your mortgage. At what point, at what year, what month do you make back up that that $5,000? And then it makes sense after that. But a lot of people, they may, not stay in their house that long, that sort of thing. And then it doesn't make sense. So you really have to say, okay, how much am I going to save? How much does it cost me to buy those points? You have to do that math before, because the answer is sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Okay. And it really makes more sense if the seller or the builder are paying the points for you. All right. Serious. Can you get a house with no job, but a couple thousand and good credit? Probably not. It's going to be difficult. And this is why it's going to be difficult. I'm not saying you cannot do it, but most lenders, when they're lending you money, want to see like consistent money, right? So say you have, I don't know, $100,000 in the bank and you're going to buy a $300,000 house and you have a 750 credit score or something like that. They want to see some employment, because that money could just dwindle down and then you have nothing to pay your mortgage. So typically they want to see, okay, where's the income coming from that's going to help you sustain this mortgage for the next 30 years? If they don't feel like you have enough money to do that, then you're probably not going to be approved for a mortgage, just having cash in the bank. But, you could have won Mega Millions, right? And then maybe, they'll lend you the money. But it really depends on how much money you have in your accounts and the price of the home that you're trying to buy. Okay. Are there any programs that help with your mortgage? If you already have a mortgage and you're having difficulty paying it, There are, first you need to talk to your lender, their current lender, and try to get a modification, try to get some kind of program. And then there are other programs that could help you. I just don't have, like, usually they are like nonprofit organizations that may help with rental and foreclosure prevention, that sort of thing. I will make a note to try to get some of those things, because I think that's what you're asking me about programs like that. But start with your lender. I know in most states they have a Department of Community Affairs, so Department of Community Affairs, and they have like some of those foreclosure prevention things, some different funds that are for those. I know they definitely like had a lot during the pandemic, but they probably still have some funds available. So go to your lender first and then go to the Department of Community Affairs. That should be your next step. But I'm going to make a note just for any other programs. I have a list of them because I think I have a list on my computer. All right. Thank you, Clone Wars. All right. No problem, Sham. Answer your question. I'm trying to get through a few more. All right, Sheila. My disabled 32-year-old granddaughter is living with me. I'm a senior. Is there a program to help me and her purchase a home for her future living? I don't know if there's a specific program, but you can work with a lender and say, okay, with whatever money you get from her, disability, whether that's Social Security or any other kind of income that you get, and whatever your income is, why don't you just go see what you qualify for first? And then, that could be a base to say, okay, we qualify for this with our current income. And then within your state, and I have a whole video on down payment assistance programs in every state. What kind of programs will help you with the down payment that will help? Because if you can get the price of the home lower, then your payment is going to be lower, of course. So you want to look at those to say, okay, we qualify for this, but how can we get help with our down payment? How can we get help with our closing costs? You want to look at those things. And another thing is USDA Direct. It's a program specifically for low income households, and they will help subsidize a portion of your mortgage, but you have to apply with them specifically. It's not through a lender. You have to apply with them. You have to be moving to a rural area in order to qualify, but they will subsidize some of your mortgage payment to help you make that payment. That's the only program that I'm aware of that helps you pay your mortgage. All right. So thank you, Ms. Sheila. All right, I'm not a lender, so I don't have FHA loan rates, but I recommend the mortgage reports, bank rate, and then, and I've put it on my videos before, but in my video, like first time buyer questions, I wish everybody answered. I tell you about a rate site that the government provides that'll tell you the rates that are being given in your specific state. So go ahead and watch that video. Even if you don't watch a video, in the description of that video, I have the link for that. So that'll tell you what the interest rates are in your state. All right, I'm trying to get through as many as possible. Let me see what it says. We are pre-approved for a time today and currently in a hotel due to our apartment being destroyed in a fire last week. I'm sorry to hear that. We need to find a new apartment, look for a new place. Will this affect credit? It shouldn't affect your credit because I would definitely talk to the company, right? Your apartment company. Like, what are they doing? Because I'm not sure, but you can't be expected to pay your rent for a place you're not living in. Correct. So they shouldn't be, saying that your rent is late because you cannot live there. I would think that the lease is kind of void because they're not providing you with housing. But I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what's going on in that state. But I would definitely, every state has legal aid. So if you are having, problems or anything like that with the apartments, but they should not be reporting. The only way it would impact your credit is if they're reporting that you didn't pay your rent in a house that you cannot, or apartment that you cannot occupy. So if you feel like they're doing that, then try legal aid, just get some advice. Usually they have like a hotline or something where you can ask legal questions like that. So that'd be like the first step for you to do. And that should be it. You should be able to find another apartment. Hopefully you have some kind of rental insurance. If not, usually the Red Cross will help you, get back on your feet or find another place. All right, good question. Kawana, can underwriting get you in a house instead of your credit score, like paying credit cards, etc. on time? Can underwriting get you? All right, yeah. So you can find some lenders. So what she's asking is, do I have to have a credit score? This is what I think you're asking. Do I have to have a credit score in order to buy a house? Not necessarily. There are companies, mortgage companies. Dave Ramsey's always talking about one, Churchill Mortgage, I think. There are mortgage companies that will manually underwrite you. Even Kevin's company will manually underwrite you. So you just have to ask the lender, do you do manual underwriting? So if you don't have a credit score, you just need to do manual underwriting and they can still approve you. It just requires a little bit more paperwork, a little bit more background history, that sort of thing. But you can get approved for a mortgage without a credit score. Magic Johnson, do you recommend going through a realtor first time buyer? Yes, definitely. Because the thing is, you guys, and I have my first time home buyer guide that I sell. I'm redoing it. I'm still constantly redoing it, but when I have it out, I'll announce it. But if you don't know, I want you to have two things. Number one, I want you to have personal knowledge, but I also want you to have the knowledge of somebody else that's done this before. So I do talk about, as a first time home buyer, I don't want you to have a new agent. And if you do have a new agent, then that new agent needs to have a mentor. You need to know who that new agent's mentor is. So if you have an agent you want to use, and you're like, how long have you been doing this? How many things have you closed? That sort of thing. You find out, hey, they just got their license last week, 2 months ago, something like that. Oh, do you have a mentor that you're working with at your brokerage? You know, I would love to work with you, but are you being mentored by somebody with more experience? If they say yes to that, then you probably still can work with them. But if they're very new, I don't want you working with them because they don't have enough experience to know to guide you in, in whatever direction. You may, just because they have their license doesn't mean they practice in the field, right? So I always recommend that you don't, first-time home buyers don't use new agents unless that new agent has a mentor. But that person, based on their experience, is going to help you in a lot of different ways that you may not even think to ask. You may not even think to question, that sort of thing. So when I'm creating, it's called a first-time home buyer masterclass. It's going to come with a handbook. I'm going to take you through all of the things that you should ask, all of the things that you should question, all of those things. Because even when you have an agent, I get a lot of emails, and I usually get emails after the fact. Or what should I do now? How can I sue my agent? How can I sue the seller? And it's very, very difficult, very, very costly. Some people I'm able to help, but some people I'm not able to help. Like this lady, contacted me, I think on Facebook, and she has a $30,000 mold problem in her house. She wants to sue the agent. She wants to sue the home inspector. She wants to sue everybody. She can't even find a lawyer that wants to represent her because there's not enough money. So my goal is to help you not get in that situation in the first place, because at some point, either the agent, home inspector, somebody wasn't advocating for her as they should, in my opinion. Or maybe she didn't ask the right question. She didn't know to ask. But I never want a first-time home buyer to hand over their whole transaction to the agent either. Like, I'm trusting you with everything. Whatever you tell me to do, I want you to question that agent. I want to say, what about this? What about that? So then you're a confident first-time home buyer, right? So you definitely need an agent to get you through your first time. All right, Mr. ABS question, new build. I need to increase my thing. I'm not over the question. New build to be completed by mid-February 2024. Deciding between two lenders, but neither has rate lock that would cover the time. Go higher rate with longer lock, or lower rate with shorter lock. All right, so it all depends. Like, this is really up to you. And some people want the security of knowing what their rate is. But when you're locking right now, you're locking at the highest rates that there probably have been. And I don't know if I would pay to be locked in like at a 7 something. I don't know what the rate is. Hopefully you're being offered some kind of rate buy down, special rate, something. In my last transaction where I said my client got the 5.5, the builder paid for the rate lock, they paid for the rate lock extension, they paid for all of that. So it wasn't coming out of my client's pocket to extend the rate lock. And they were probably under contract for about 4 or 5 months. I would really think about it and weigh your pros and cons. I can't tell you that rates are going to be lower come February, but I would say if you're locking now, you're locking at the highest rates they've been. So I also recommend the mortgage reports. They usually tell you if you should be locking your rate and tell you why you should be locking your rate. And I'm not sure if they go 6 months out, but they'll do like if you close in 7 days, if you're closing in 30 days, if you're closing in 60 days, they'll tell you if you should lock your rate or if you should not lock your rate. So I recommend that. If it was me, I'm trying to think, if it was me, this is not, I'm not a lender, not my advice. I probably wouldn't lock because we're at the highest it's been. So, and I think inflation probably will stabilize and go down and be a little bit lower come February. So do that math, go to the mortgage reports. Again, every day they give a rate lock recommendation and tell you why you should lock or not lock your rate. If the lender asks the lender to pay for extended rate lock, see if that works. Yeah, I don't know if I would pay for it to be at this high rate. Like a lot of people were paying for extended rate locks as rates were going up, right? So if they wanted that 4% and they knew the Federal Reserve was going to increase rates every so often, and so they did the extended rate locks, and a lot of them paid for that extended rate lock. So looking back for them, it probably did make sense because rates went from 5% to 7%. So you would have to, for it to make sense for you, you probably would be thinking that rates are going to go from 7% to like 8% or something like that. So, get as much counsel as you can from your lenders, from your research, right? What the Federal Reserve is probably going to do, where inflation is headed, because as inflation goes down, which right now at least is kind of going down. They raised interest rates last month, but it didn't impact rates. Rates stayed about the same even when they did the 0.25% hike. So you want to do that research to see if it's worth paying for it. All right, thank you. Okay, let me see. T says, hello, Ms. Shahid. I know I heard you say get at least 3 mortgage loan quotes is best, but did you also say that 3 quotes would just be 1 hard credit? Yes. So I've said both of those things. It will be only 1 hard credit pull. It really depends on what credit scoring model you're using. Some say 14 days, some say 30 days. So usually I tell people on my channel 14 days because I don't know what credit scoring model somebody's using. So if you do them all within 14 days, 1 credit pull, and the hard credit pull is either, I've heard 0 points to 5 points maximum that is impacting your credit. But most common, most of the lenders that I've interviewed say between 2 to 3 points. Are townhouses better than co-ops for first-time home buyers? So co-ops are more in like northern areas typically because they have a higher cost of living, more people, but you don't own the co-op. Like you own a portion of it. It's not that common where I am, but I used to live in a co-op. I'm from the Bronx, but I was young, but we didn't own, or my parents did not own the co-op. They owned like a portion of it. Like that's why it's called a co-op, because you're kind of sharing in some of the revenue that you may have. So, but they have like a down payment portion, that sort of thing, but they didn't own it. So a townhouse, you actually own the townhouse. You can sell the townhouse when you're ready. You can do more with it. So I think in terms of flexibility, a townhouse is probably going to be better because you actually own that property. You can do different things with it. For a co-op, there's probably limited things that you could do as far as selling or transferring it to somebody else, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go with the townhouse over the co-op. However, if you're like up north, there may be not as many options, so the co-op is your better option. So at least you're doing something. You're building some kind of value in ownership versus like just renting. All right, I have some good questions. We're almost at 7 o'clock, so I'm about to, let's say I'm going to answer. I'm going to go through because I tried to really answer them in the order that they came in for the most part. And you guys had a lot of good questions. So I'm going to take 10 more questions, but I'm going to kind of go through the list of questions that I think are really, really good. That could be really helpful for everyone. But I'm going to take Brittany's question. Hello, as a married couple, can you use both incomes for the loan, but only one person apply? The answer is no. Okay. They will not count your income if you're not going to be on the loan. Okay. So, but a lot of people have asked this before. So the answer for the most part is no, unfortunately. And a lot of people do this because maybe the one person's credit is not as good, that sort of thing. So you're basically trying to use their income. They're not using their credit. Okay. So for most lenders, anybody that I've talked to, they're going to say no. However, what you can do a lot of times to get around this a little bit is one spouse can gift the down payment to another spouse. So you can, I've had that happen before where only the husband was on the loan, the wife gifted the down payment to the other spouse. That's a possibility. But in general, that one person, you're both going to have to be on the loan. Conventional loans, if credit is the issue, as far as qualification, there are conventional loans that allow you to average your credit score. So if say somebody has a 750, the other person has a 550, they'll do an average, maybe be able to qualify that way. So my best advice for you as a couple is to go ahead and try to qualify, either one person qualify, see what you get approved for. Maybe use some of the income from the other spouse as a gift to the other spouse. Or try to see if you can average your credit scores if credit is the issue. But I would go ahead and get pre-approved because a lot of people recommend that, you don't buy the house. If you're able to, whoever's making the most money, maybe you go ahead and buy your house, the other person buy, there's a lot of things that you can do creatively as far as the house. But the answer to your question is no. And I think we've done videos on this in the past. It's been a while though, but the answer typically is no. If the person is going to, if you're going to use the person's income, they have to be on your loan unless they're just gifting you some money. Okay, good question, Brittany. All right, so I'm going to do my 10 questions and I'm going to count them to make sure I don't go over because sometimes I go over. All right, so make sure you take a moment and like and subscribe. Let me throw that up there. Take a moment, like and subscribe. We're almost at 7 o'clock. I'm doing this again on the 24th. Make sure you get the notifications. I'll probably have a theme for the 24th. Don't know what's going to be, but I'll figure that out. I really do appreciate you guys supporting my channel, coming to my lives. We're at 244 right now. All right, so I'm going back up. 10 questions. Thank you. All right, this won't count as a 10. Do you service all of Georgia or Metro Atlanta? Metro Atlanta. However, my sister and I, because I stopped taking clients because YouTube got really big, other things got really big. So I take clients every once in a while. But my sister and I are teaming up to do more, taking more clients because she'll be working with me. So I'm going to open that back up. There is a link in the description of most of my videos right now. It says Georgia. If you click there, you can do a consultation. But Metro Atlanta, like, so we're talking about like Savannah, what's another place, North Georgia, Savannah, then I can give you a referral, but you just fill that out. All right, now I'm going to start with the questions. All right, this is question number 1. Carlene, she's asking about workers' comp, which is good. Can you buy a house on workers' comp and Social Security disability as income? The answer is no. And this counts for workers' comp. This counts for unemployment income, short-term disability income. Lenders are going to say that amount or that income is not going to last. It's not going to go past whenever your workers' comp ends or whenever your short-term disability ends or whatever your unemployment funds end. If you have anything that is not permanent, as far as permanent income coming to you on a regular basis, permanent means there's no stopping point to it. They're not going to use that as income. And I've talked about child support. Let's throw child support in here really quickly. if your children are 3 years from not getting child support anymore, they're not going to count that either. So if you have 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and the child support is going to end, then they're not going to count that. So you want to, buy a house when your kids are young if you're planning on using the child support income. And even if, say, you're divorced or whatever the agreement that you have is that they're going to pay child support through college, they're not going to count that either, because they figure, okay, what if your child doesn't go to college? Then you're not going to get that money. So anything that is temporary or not going to extend for more than 3 years, but like workers' comp and all like unemployment, they're not going to count it. But child support, they have to see it that's going to continue 3 years or longer. All right, good question. All right, that's 9 more, you guys, because I'm going over my 7 o'clock. All right, Jennifer says, given the limited number of homes on the market, when should you compromise your desired features and location? Okay, let's go with features first. I think you're going to have some deal breakers. Like, you have to have this. And I think the have to have should be non-cosmetic things. So if it's like, I have to have quartz countertops, right? You can buy quartz countertops. You don't have, that's not something that you cannot have. But if you have to have, like, some people have to have a flat backyard because they have plans, they grew up in a backyard, they want to have space, then that's something that's not, you're going to compromise on. You want that flat backyard. You can't necessarily make that happen on most lots. It has to already come, like the land is already going to have to be like that. So in most cosmetic things that a lot of first-time home buyers can't see past, paint, fixtures, even like cabinets and the color of those, all of that can be changed pretty easily. So I definitely think that you should compromise on things like that. Location. I always tell people to make sure you're in the most affordable place, the best neighborhood for your budget, And usually that is best school systems for your budget. Because again, it may be, if you want to be in all A-rated schools, it may be out of your budget, but maybe the B schools are in your budget, or maybe the C schools are in your budget. So you really want the best school system, the lowest crime for your budget. So as much as possible to hold your value, because there are going to be people like you, right? There are going to be some people that say, regardless, I'm not moving to that neighborhood. I don't care if it's free. I'm not moving to that neighborhood. But there's always going to be some people that are, in your similar position that want to get their first house, that want to buy, that want to do something. So you are going to have that resale value that's probably going to hold up over time. So you want to make sure you're in the best school system and the lowest crime for your budget. And you want to also make sure, when I say location, you want to be so far that it is mentally draining. If you're going to be in your car for 2 hours or 2.5 hours home and, there and back, or it's like the transportation is kind of crazy. You have children, you can't take them to their games. You can't, all of that kind of stuff, then you're probably moving too far. But if it's still pretty reasonable, maybe you only go into the office 1 time a week or something like that, then you might want to get that location a little bit farther out for the price. But yeah, I would definitely compromise on things that are cosmetic. Like, oh, my dream was to have all hardwood floors and this has carpet. You always can get hardwood floors, right? So those things you want to be able to compromise on. But again, you just want to make sure you're in the best neighborhood and the lowest crime for your budget. All right. I have 8 more questions. All right. I'm going through. All right, Maurice, I'm a first-time home buyer. Multifamily properties are appealing to me, and they're appealing to a lot of people. So I have a video that says, are you a single-family fool? Like, basically, should you be buying a multifamily home? So I want you to watch that video. But it says, how can I know when it's better for me to buy single-family versus multifamily? Here's the thing about multifamily. Depending on where you are, there are not as many multifamily homes as single-family homes. So the inventory is going to be lower. So it's going to take you longer, usually in most areas, to find a multifamily home in your budget, depending on what your budget is, that you're willing to live in. Remember, you have to live in that house for the first year, typically, right? Unless you're buying it as an investment property. You're planning on living at least one of the units for at least a year. Are you willing to do that for a year? Are you willing to be a landlord? All of those things. But that video pretty much goes over the pros and cons of buying single family versus multifamily. So you're gonna have to go over it. But I think a lot of like the YouTubers that push, not YouTubers, any kind of social media influencers that are get multifamily, get multifamily, get multifamily, it's not in high inventory is low anyway. Multifamily inventory is even lower. So if it's not a high priority, like housing, like buying a house is not a high priority, you probably can wait. It might take you a year to find a multifamily home that's going to work for you, or longer. So it's depending on like your time range, all of that, to buy multifamily. But I did a video on, it's called, Are You a Multifamily Fool? That's what it is. No, Are You a Single Family Fool? That's what it's called. Just saying like, the benefits of buying multifamily over single family and the pros and cons. So I have 7 more, you guys. All righty. Okay, y'all are answering each other's questions. I love it, love it, love it. Okay, I'll take this one as number 7. All right. It says, can you buy a family estate home under a business? And because a lot of people ask me, can you buy a home in a business, under a business? And the answer is yes. But if you plan on qualifying for a house, right, through your business, that business needs to be generating enough income to qualify for that house. If that makes sense. So you want to make sure, like, talk to your lender. How much money does the business need to be generating in order for you to buy a house in the business name? The other way you can do it is buy the house and then transfer the house into a trust, if you want it to happen that way. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but anything that you're doing, if you're trying to buy it with your business credit, if you're trying to buy it in your business name, if you're trying to do all of that, you still have to qualify for it. So that business needs to be earning enough money, your business credit score, all of that kind of stuff has to be good enough for you to qualify. So you just want to make sure you understand that. But you should talk to a trust attorney and you should talk to a lender and all of those people and say, okay, what's the best thing, the best way for me to do this, which would make the most sense for you and your family. And last thing, Laditra, I have 2 videos under my lives where I've done like estate planning and those kind of videos. Look at those. It might help you kind of think it through. All right. Will applying for, this is number 4. Hopefully I'm not losing count. When applying for a new apartment affect pre-approval, our lease was ended, no bad payments. Anytime that you're doing a hard credit pull and you have to ask the apartment complex, the landlord, whoever's checking your credit, ask them if it's a hard credit pull. Anytime you do that, then it's going to impact your credit score. So will it impact it dramatically? Probably not. So, if this is something you have to do in order to be housed, then go ahead and do it. I wouldn't worry about it too much. So the answer is yes, but it's probably going to be minimal for the most part. So yeah, go ahead and do it, because when you think about it, if you, remember I said the hard credit pulls are like, 2 to, or I said 0 to 5 points, something like that. If you do the hard credit pull and your credit score was a 650, now it's a 647, that's not going to impact your interest rate. You're going to be offered the same rate. You're going to be offered the same, be able to qualify the same, that sort of thing. It's not that these hard credit pulls take you from like a 750 to a 650. It's not that drastic. So you'll still be able to be in the same position you were before you got the apartment. All right, you guys. T. West said he could smell mold right away. Yeah, it's a lot. I want to do a whole video on it, but I have to kind of go over everything that happened. Hello. Those of you asking about foreclosures, I have 2 videos, at least 2 on foreclosures. Watch those. One, I actually went out to the foreclosure so y'all can see how the bid works. All right, let me see. All right. This is a good question. It's going to be number 5. It says, we just bought a new construction single family home and closed August 4th. So congratulations. August 4th was last Friday. Congratulations. And they say our first payment is September. Did we get 1 month for free, or do we sort of pay for it already and just don't know? Okay, typically, typically when you close on August 4th, you will skip September and pay. Your first actual payment is going to be October 1st. So let me say that again. Whenever you buy a house, the month that you close, and this is typical, the month that you close, no payment is due. You will skip the following month and your first payment is due the next month. So in this example, you close August 4th, you should not have a September payment. Your first payment should be due October 1st and late on the 15th, because with mortgages, there's a 15-day grace period. So I would go back to your closing attorney. No, look at your paperwork and they should tell you, like I had a closing today. Their first payment is due October 1st. However, in August, they did pay prepaid interest. They paid interest from today, from the 10th through the 31st. So you do pay interest up front, but they take that as part of your closing costs. But you do not have to make a mortgage payment until October. Again, I just had a closing today. I was at the closing. I've been through probably hundreds of closings at this point, and it's always skip a month. But if you're not sure, go back to your closing attorney or go back to your title company, or in your paperwork, they usually give you a payment coupon telling you when your first payment is due. Like you probably signed something that said when your first payment is due. But good question. All right, we're at 5 more. He did correct it. Sorry, I just saw that October is the first mortgage payment. So yeah, you paid the prepaid interest, from the 4th through the 31st. You pay that interest at closing. You're going to skip September and your first payment is going to be due in October. All right, good question. Somebody's asking me, what is a good offer? I think I explained that a little bit when we were talking about putting in an offer. I've never put in an offer where I didn't look at the comps for the neighborhood first and reviewed them with my client and said, hey, what do you want to offer in this house? This is what, the house is likely worth. This is what, homes sold for in that neighborhood recently. This is kind of what I think we should come in at. What do you think? We're having that conversation. So if you learn nothing else, you should be having a conversation with your agent about a reasonable price to offer in this house. Don't count on the appraisal coming in low and then you renegotiating it. I don't want you to do that. Okay. All right. We're at question number 7. Is it possible to pay off PMI instead of buying a point to save money? There is an option when you're doing a conventional loan to pay the PMI up front. You need to ask the lender how much that amount would be for you to pay it at closing. So this is an option. You need to ask your lender how much would it be for you to pay it up front. The only thing, anytime you're paying anything up front, make sure you're going to be staying in that house long term, because they're going to get their money, right? Are you going to make your money back? Because you're paying up front. Because if I sell the house, I'm never going to continue paying the PMI. But if you're paying it up front, they're getting their money now. And the assumption is, okay, I've saved this money over the long term because I'm going to live here for this amount of time. But if you do something with that house ahead of time, like you sell it, then you might have just paid up front for no reason. But go ahead and look at, how much you would have to pay up front to save that money. A good question. Did I say that was question number 7? All right. Thank you, guys. I kind of did make a question. I mean, the only people that are really offering the 1% conventional right now are Rocket Mortgage, and then some. This is question number 7 officially. She's asking, can I do a video on the 1% conventional loan? I did, I think in the last 2 months or so, whether it made sense or not for you to do the 1% conventional. And I gave you some thoughts on it. The people that are offering it right now are Rocket Mortgage, and then some brokerage, mortgage brokers are offering this to you. But I did make a video on that already. So check that video out. All right, I'm kind of going back up. Somebody said back. I've subscribed and I already like this video. I love your channel. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you have not, somebody said get an inspection. All right, my personal credit is back and I purchased through my LLC, which made a large profit. Maybe. The answer is maybe. You need to go to a lender, tell them that you want to purchase. Here's what, I have, and see, if that's something you can do. That's my answer to that question. For anybody that says, I want to buy a house in my business name, go to the lender, ask them, I want to do this. This is what I have, and see what they say. Because a lot of times what I'm finding is even if you got everything, you got your business credit, you got your money making money, a lot of them still want to go back to your personal credit. A lot of them. So just make sure. Okay, Rodney says, buying a competitive market, should my agent run comps before showing homes? Going so fast, there's no time to think and offer. Okay, if you're in a market where homes are going still super fast, then what I used to do is have a conversation ahead of time with my clients. So like during like the pandemic, like things have slowed down a little bit in Atlanta. Homes are staying on the market longer. So like our days on the market in one area might be 14 days. So you have a little bit of time to get your offer in. You have a little bit of time to shop a little bit more. But at the height of everything, it might have been like 1 day or 2 days at the most that you had time. So what I would do is, and then this is question number 8. What I would do is before I took that client out, we would meet and I would go over, I would say, hey, this is the price range you're in. These are the neighborhoods you're interested in. This is how long they're staying on the market. This is how much they're selling for. This is how much they're getting above asking price. We already kind of did all of that stuff. So we knew what the competition was like. So we were ready to make an offer. So we didn't have to go and say, okay, this one, what about this one? We already kind of knew what that market was. And you can do it both ways. I just feel like everything, in some areas, things have slowed down enough. So you can do it one by one. But when I had a new client, when things were super competitive, we're going to go over all of that ahead of time. Your agent, I used to pull up on average, so you have like one subdivision or one area, on average, how much were people offering above market value? Were sellers paying any closing costs, that sort of thing. So we knew all of that ahead of time. So we knew how to structure our offers. But good question, Rodney. Okay, let's see. 2 more. Who's going to be my last 2? Okay. Lachey. All right. This is number 9. And thank you guys for coming on. We have 227. Make sure you're hitting the like and subscribe button. Looking at a house, but the seller is living in the house until the end of October. Is it better to buy a house that's so you have 2 full months, basically, all of September, all of October. All right. Until the end of October. Is it better to buy a house that's not occupied, or can that be an advantage? Most of the time, when you're buying a resale home, it's going to be occupied. I would say the majority of the time it's going to be occupied, because a lot of people, they can't afford to move out of their home and purchase a new home until that home has sold. So I think this is more common than not that there's going to be somebody in your home ahead of time. So when you are buying a home with somebody still on it, ideally, like the number one way you want to buy a house is at closing or right before closing, that person is completely out of the house. So when you do your walkthrough, they're out, the house is clean, they have nothing in that house. But sometimes, depending on the market and the competitiveness of it, people are allowing lease backs to that seller, meaning you close, but then the seller stays in the house for a set amount of time. And your agent can run you through how that works. And sometimes people need to do that to get their offer accepted with some sellers, but it's very risky to keep that person. Remember, that house is yours legally. Your house is legal, but that other person is living in there, basically leasing it back from you. Sometimes you charge them, sometimes you don't charge them, but you definitely want to make sure that you're holding money in escrow if they leave any damages in that house, if they do anything to that house. So again, it's not my ideal. Again, when it was super competitive, I did do it with like 2 of my buyers to get their offers accepted, but it was like nerve-wracking the entire time. But I do have a video. If you do, it's called The Seller Refused to Leave. So what happens if the seller refused to leave? And I tell you how you can, as much as possible, avoid this. If you close and allow the person to say, I think this is what you're saying. If that's not what you're saying, if that's not what you're saying, if you're just saying that buying while the seller's still there, that's very common. You just want to make sure that you have a walkthrough where they're completely moved out before you officially close. So, but yeah, very common ideally, if you're on the buyer side, you want a vacant house because you could come in and out as you please. You know what it looks like. You don't have to worry about like the seller moving, what's it going to look like when they move. But I think more common is the fact that you're going to have somebody that's living there while you're under contract. All right, good question, Lachey. All right, this is going to be my last question, guys. Hopefully it's a good one. Houses in my area. Let me say this. If you have any other questions, join my Facebook group, put them in there. You can put in there anonymously. If it's something kind of a little touchy, you can put it there in the chat. You could join me on the 24th. Again, Denise says, houses in my area are selling for $500,000 plus. If I was approved for only $200,000 and I'm seeing homes for $400,000 plus, can I put down $200,000 to make up the difference on pre-approval? Yes. Okay. That when you're pre-approved, they're basically just saying that's all they will lend you. A lender will only lend you $200,000. But by all means, you can put as high as down payment as you want to put down. You can put down $400,000 and then just borrow $100,000. So whatever that difference is, they're just saying we're willing to lend you this. If you have your own cash and you can make up that difference, definitely you can go ahead and do that. Thank you guys so much. Please take a moment and hit the like and subscribe button. I have new videos coming out all next week. If you have any ideas for videos, put them in the comments. I'll try to go through the chat and get as much information as possible. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Share my videos with a friend. And let's help get more people confidently closed. All right, I'm Shahida Hill, getting you over the hill to home ownership and helping you confidently buy your first home.